Welcome to the Discover Montcalm podcast, where we're going to take a look at the communities, the businesses, the attractions, and the people that make up Montcalm County. Here is your podcast host, Dwayne Weed.
Hello, and welcome to episode 48 of the Discover Montcalm podcast. Today, we are going to talk about stories. How many people out there remember stories that their parents or grandparents told them when they were younger? You know, a little history of the family, or I remember when there used to be 3 buildings on that corner and now it's just a parking lot. That is what we're trying to do here at the Discover Montcalm podcast. I want to dive in and I want to learn the stories behind the communities, behind the businesses, behind the attractions, and behind the families. You know, families that have started businesses that are still here today. People that have just started a new business and want to make a go of it. I'd love to hear from them. I love entrepreneurs and that entrepreneurial spirit that we have. And that is why today we're going to talk about the value of storytelling. Back in episode 3, Jody from Busy Bee came in and she talked about her business. And at that time, she had just moved from one location to the other. So that's a piece of history. And I also asked her, how did she get involved? Jody answered it this way.
It was just a great opportunity to learn and serve people. And I knew about Busy Bees. It's actually just a couple miles down the road from where I live on Sydney Road.
Okay.
And the former owners were actually clients at our tax office. And they were busy and they were struggling to find help. And I had time available, so I offered them that if they ever needed help to let me know, I'd be happy to give them a hand. And they did take me up on that offer. And I came in and I started learning and I really loved it. And I'm kind of have a business mind and I'm a little bit of a numbers geek, if you will. And they just asked me if I would be interested in buying it. They valued what they had built and they wanted to pass it on to someone who is business minded.
The power of telling a good story. Everybody in business, whether you're a small business, retail, manufacturing company, whether you're a nonprofit, you're a community, you all need to be telling stories. You know, right now, Instagram reels, YouTube reels, you know, putting out these short little video clips that kind of highlight your products, your services, your history, whatever it might be. Each of you need to do that. And here at the Discover Montcalm podcast, I want to take just a portion of what you do. I want to learn about you. I want to dive into the facts of how you got started, what it was like maybe when you were growing up in a community. In episode 9, I caught up with Mike Scott, and he kind of gave me a beginning and an end to that video from a video that I had recorded back in 2018. And he talks about what it was like kind of growing up here in small town Howard City. But that could be Carson City, Vesterberg. It all kind of blends together because we're all one county. So when you listen to him, you'll probably go, well, that happened in my county, or not my county, but that happened in my community as well.
Basically, back in those days, you knew everybody in town. You didn't know people's addresses. You'd ask them, they're looking for somebody, they'd tell you, you didn't know right where they lived. Today, you know, things change. There's a lot more move-ins and outs than there used to be, and it was a little quieter time, I always thought anyway. Good memories. I was, either you can call it fortunate or unfortunate. I had my grandparents and 3 great aunts lived on Main Street at that time, and so as growing up as a child, I was kind of limited into being able to get away with anything.
What I love about the podcast is that we're able to get in and learn a little bit more about how the business got started. Sticking with Adam at the village market in Carson City, he talks about how his dad was kind of going to school full-time and working full-time, and that kind of gives you a little bit of a glimpse into how that business got started. And to me, I find that very, very fascinating. Village Market in Carson City.
Yeah, I call it Dean's School of Hard Knocks. So
Okay.
Dean
Is your father?
Is my father.
Yep.
Yep. So family owned and operated business. We've had 3 grocery stores over the years, and my uncle's got the one there in Sheridan, and we sold the other one in Muir, our original store. I actually, fun fact, that grand opening of that store was the day I come home from the hospital from being born. Dad was commuting back and forth to Big Rapids, taking a full load there, still working 40 hours a week for $1 an hour. I mean, he was grinding for sure. And Wendy came to him with an opportunity, and that store in Muir had partially burnt, and him and some other guys invested and basically told Dad, hey, if you're thinking about a different career, path, I've got this opportunity. And basically a situation where Dad comes in, gets things rolling, and then buys them out and gets his foot into the grocery world. So in a nutshell, that's where it all started.
The story. I remember interviewing my parents in the early 2000s. I kind of got my mom together and I asked her a bunch of questions about her growing up, and then my dad interviewing him, and then I brought them both together and kind of talked about how they met and kind of took us through the years. And I think I did that back in 2006. In 2011, I lost my mom. And I'm so glad that I have that piece of history. I didn't know it at the time, but back in 2018, I did an interview with Ralph Hollenstein, and I didn't realize how important that was to the family until a week after that episode aired. I'll tell you more on that story right after these messages from our sponsors. We'd like to thank our sponsors. West Michigan Technology and Design Solutions is your perfect choice for managed IT, website design, website hosting, and consulting services. WMTDS.com, 616-485-7600. Custom Vinyl Signs and Busy Bee Embroidery and Gifts is your one-stop shop for embroidery, vinyl, screen printing, and engraving needs. Go to cvsdbusybees.com or call 989-261-7446. And DW Video, your film and videotape specialist. They design websites and business videos that tell and share your story. dwvideo.com, 231-250-9624. Now, back to our podcast. Welcome back to the Discover Montcalm podcast. My name's Dwayne. I'm your host and the producer. You can find us on Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, as well as on Google Podcast and iTunes at Discover Montcalm Podcast. You can also find us at discovermontcalmpodcast.com. You can check out all the episodes, like episode 13 with Ralph Hollenstein. Back in 2018, I was looking at doing the Discover Montcalm podcast as a documentary at that time. It wasn't until later that it turned into the podcast. One thing that I didn't know when I was editing that video with Ralph is that about a week after that episode aired, episode 13, I heard that Ralph had passed away. I received a phone call from his son. I remember I was at school at the Career Center, and it was in between classes, and I get this call, and a gentleman on the other end said, "I'm Ralph's son, and we just want to say thank you." And I'm like, "What do you mean, thank you?" And they said that, his dad had passed away. They were at the funeral home, and they were looking at writing things up. And they were like, "What year was Dad the township supervisor of Reynolds?" And all these things that go through your head, and they didn't know. And they did a Google search. Well, up came the Discover Montcalm podcast with his father. And he said, we sat there as a family and watched it. He says, we're smiling, we're laughing, we're crying. But that's the importance of a story. And it's those kind of things that drive me to want to tell your business story, your organization story, that want to get in and dive into more of the history of what this county has to offer. The stories are there. The people that tell these stories, however, may not always be here. I want to capture this so that it has a piece of history that somewhere in the future somebody might be doing some Google search on whatever device that's probably smaller than whatever. Maybe it's their decoder ring that they're going to be using. But this information will come up, and it will be part of what will be then be our history, which is happening now. So Ralph talked a little bit about how he came from Grand Rapids and purchased the farm and the 40 acres and what it was like bringing his family from the Grand Rapids area up to Howard City.
And she said, would you be interested? And I talked to my father about it. And he said, yeah, sure. And it had the house on it and an old barn and privy and that type of thing. So at any rate, I said, well, Dad, what do you think you want to offer on this? He says, well, try $7,000. So we got the 40 acres and the house and everything, the creek and so forth for about $7,000. That was the beginning. And then I was living in East Grand Rapids, and we had 5 children. And my wife was pregnant for number 6. So she said, we got to get out of this house. It's too small for a kick it. So I said, well, let's look around a little bit. So we did, and the stuff was pretty expensive out there in Grand Rapids. So I said, hey, let's go up to the farmhouse. So I fixed it up a little bit, you know, and said, let's try it. So we went up here for a couple of weeks. My wife said, I love it.
Montcalm County's story is exactly what we're telling here at the Discover Montcalm podcast. Your business, your organization, your community, your family. If grandpa or grandma or a great uncle or whatever did something interesting here, I'd like to talk to them. I'd like to capture part of your family's history and put it on the podcast so that we can share it. Not only have it be available to share with your family, but share what that family member did for the community. Whether it's Sheridan, or whether it's Stanton, or Vestaburg, or Carson City, or Howard City, or Lakeview, Langston, Greenville. Let's capture these pieces of history before the people, especially on the historical side of things, before these people aren't here. I would love to get with your museums and your nonprofits that are in the area and talk about what services that they're providing to the area, what history is available here in the area. My name's Dwayne. You can reach me at 231-250-9624. That's 231-250-9624. You can also email me at dwayne@dwvideo.com. That's Dwayne, D-U-A-N-E, at dwvideo.com. Check out all our past episodes of the Discover Montcalm podcast. Check out the history that we have, the businesses that we have, and remember to buy and shop locally. Thank you for watching. We'll see you in the next episode.
Connect and subscribe to Discover Montcalm Podcast at discovermontcalmpodcast.com. Follow us on Facebook, Instagram, and YouTube at Discover Montcalm Podcast. To be featured in an upcoming show, contact Dwayne at 231-250-9624. Remember to subscribe at discovermontcalmpodcast.com.